So welcome back. We've got 2 more sessions left in this year's Collaborative Journalism Summit. And the next one, we are going to explore distribution. So something that a lot of collaboratives do, but struggle with, is create content together that they want to get out to other partners or just other folks in their media ecosystem or universe to republish, rebroadcast, and share. It is not as easy as that may sound. And that's what our next conversation is going to focus on. So I'd like to welcome to the stage James Frazier. James is with the Newark News and Story Collaborative. You saw him just a little while ago during his lightning talk. He is going to host this conversation. So James, the floor is yours.
Hi, peace everyone. So again, my name is James Frazier. I'm with the Newark News and Stories Collaborative. I'm a writer, I'm a coach, I'm all around good guy. And today we have a conversation about the distribution of content amongst media platforms. It has been a constant challenge, not only for our cohort, but obviously for cohorts around the country. So I have a nice list of amazing, talented, brilliant speakers today. And we'll start with, I'll do introductions, then we'll get in with the conversation. So first, I have Tegan Wendland, editor for the newly created Mississippi River Basin Agriculture and Water Desk, based at the University of Missouri. The collaborative reporting network is dedicated to covering environmental issues in the Mississippi River Basin and distributing it for free to other collaboratives for free. Next, we have Melanie Blender, sitting next to me, director of the Granite State News Collaborative, a collective of 20 local media and educational and community organizations across New Hampshire. Next, we have Coburn Dukehart, multimedia director at Wisconsin Watch. Currently, head of product, directs the center's visual and digital strategy, creating visual and audio content, manages digital assets, and trains student and professional journalists. Last but certainly not least, we have Michael Crowe, a science and environment journalist based in Seattle. He leads the Covering Climate Collaborative, which brings together newsrooms around the country to cover the impacts of climate change at a local level and reports on the ways communities can impact it or take action. So first, I want to pass the mic to Tegan, who actually published an amazing article, The Struggle to Give Away Stories. Let's hear what you have to say.
I'm glad you thought it was amazing. I think it's one of the nerdiest things I've ever written. So I'm the new editor for this collaborative journalism project, the Mississippi River Basin Ag and Water Desk, which you just mentioned, based at the University of Missouri. And we work with Report for America. We've partnered with 10 newsrooms throughout the Mississippi River Basin, ranging from the Star Tribune at the headwaters or close to it up in Minneapolis, St. Paul, to The Lens, which is a nonprofit investigative newsroom down in New Orleans, which is where I'm based, although I'm in Kentucky today on a tour of the lower part of the Mississippi River Basin. And so we've got these 10 newsrooms. We've hired 10 Report for America reporters based at their newsrooms. WCIJ, where Coburn is one of our newsrooms as well. It's funded by the Walton Family Foundation. We're covering environmental issues, and then we're building this big distribution network where we're going to give all this content away for free. So we're inviting news outlets across the country to sign up for our network, and we'll send a blast out when our stories are ready, and they can download those stories and republish them. And so that's kind of what brought me to this problem that we're talking about here today. We're not going to serve as publishers. We're not going to publish on the agandwaterdesk.org, but we're rather going to drive traffic to the originating publications. And the problem, as you may have all heard, is that it's really hard to give news away. There's really no streamlined, simple way to share story elements. So I'll pause there unless you want me to talk about what our plan is, but I assume we'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to that. We're doing introductions now. I'll let you guys, all the speakers, share what you got going on, and then we'll have some questions to get to the bottom of this. Next, we have Melanie Blender.
Yes, hi, it's great to be here. Thank you. So we are, as you mentioned, the Granite State News Collaborative. It's a collective of more than 20 media, community, and educational partners working together and essentially sharing content. When we first got started, it was largely by email because we didn't have a lot. And then the pandemic hit and we all agreed to share that, like cover that together. So as you can imagine, we went from having 1 or 2 stories to a ton all the time. So we needed something that was quick and easy to set up, that anyone could use, that most importantly was free, that everyone knew there was going to be no training because we needed to do it quickly. So we essentially set up a Google folder that we now used to store all of the shared stories in a kind of communal story library. I kind of pull the stories in, and I have a news clerk, thank God, who helps me. And we do this twice a day. We do this 7 days a week. And then we have 2 email alerts that we send out to all of our partners and in our distribution network, so that they can know what's going on. We can talk to each other, and then they can just pull what they need out of the Google Doc and use it in their own CMS. So it's pretty low tech, low stress kind of also, although sometimes we have some challenges, but overall it's been working pretty well for us.
Indeed, indeed. Next, we have Coburn.
Hi, everyone. I'm Coburn Dukehart. I work at Wisconsin Watch, which is the news arm of Wisconsin Center for Investigative Journalism. I'm really excited to be working with Tegan. I really like that logo for the Ag and Water Desk. It's the first time I'm seeing it. It's really awesome. Yeah, so we both distribute, mostly we distribute our own content. We also try to give it away for free to as many people that want to access it. We also distribute stories from partner newsrooms. We have some close partnerships with Wisconsin Public Radio and Milwaukee Neighborhood News Service specifically, and then also with a number of Gannett papers and a consortium of newsrooms up in Northeast Wisconsin. So we're both publishing and distributing other people's work and our own work. And we have a sort of unique hand-built system that I can talk about a little bit later. I recently learned it has some challenges, and I'm also really interested in your Google folder experiment, Melanie, because we tried something like that and had some challenges. So I'm happy to hear that it's working for you. So.
Right, nice. Thank you. And Michael, how are you?
Well, I'm muted to start off, but I'm well, thank you. Yeah, I'm Michael Crowe. Hello from Seattle. I wish I could be there. So I am the editor and project manager of the Climate Collaborative, which falls under the Local Media Association. It's just over a year old now. I have come on board in the last couple months as the new project manager, but we're 22 local media organizations and science partners across the country, organized by regions committed to covering climate change. In terms of distribution, LMA and the Collab is not centrally producing content, but we are sharing content across all of our partners. To join the Collab, they commit to putting forward at least one non-paywalled climate change story a month, and then contributing, excuse me, frog in my throat, contributing to regional calls where we talk with experts and kind of organize coverage decisions by region. This is a little more technical, and I can talk about this later, but we've also built a tool using accelerated mobile pages, AMP, to share content in a little widget across various websites. So any site can share content and it can be embedded on a partner website and view without redirecting. So that's something I will talk a little bit about more later, but glad to be here.
Thank you. And I love this conversation because in a time where content is king, I would imagine that people are scrambling to get their hands on any type of content that they can publish without doing the actual work themselves, right? So can you please tell me about your process and how you've been doing it and what's going on?
Yeah, and I think that when we first got started, it was really just about what is the simplest, most direct way that we can do it? Because if we had to rely on, again, it was during the pandemic, but even outside of pandemic time, you know, editors already have a job. They're putting out their own outlets, publications. We knew that what the collaborative was producing or what the partners were producing wouldn't necessarily be top of mind right out of the gate. So this was a way to really make it as simple as possible. And that's how we came up with our process. So I and Joe can show you our shared Google folder so you get a sense of what we do. But like basically, Every day I go to each of the partner outlets and I pull in, I literally cut and paste. I copy and paste the story. I download the photo, download the cut lines. You can go back to the last one. That would be great. And I put them in these folders where it has the date, it has the outlet, the headline. If you were able to click on one of those folders, you'd open it up. It would have a Google Doc that has the story in it. Each story gets our boilerplate, our shared boilerplate, which is partly how we track our stories, is by that boilerplate. It also kind of raised awareness about the collaborative itself and the partners. And then from there, this sort of got us around paywalls. This got us around sort of, the issue of having editors put stuff in, because that wasn't going to happen, and having photos, you have everything in one spot. And then again, I wanted to make it as simple as possible. So every day that's when we started the updates every day by email, and everyone's on our distribution list. That's how we communicate. If there's corrections, if there's new stories, if we win a fancy award, and we can tell each other and use that thread. If there's something that's coming up where we need to kind of co-produce something or coordinate coverage, so we're not duplicating efforts, we can do that in that shared shared email that goes out twice a day. And that was the other key thing, was having the link to the folder always in front of them. And that was key to also, it made it simple for them, but it also reminded them every day that it was there. They didn't have to go looking for it. And I think that was kind of key to them being willing to use it, and ultimately being willing to use the content that was in it. And just a couple other things I'll point out. This, what's up on the screen right now, is our tracker. We were manually tracking this, but now we have a data reporter, and who thankfully made us a little a web scraper, actually, a tool that we can kind of track our stuff. And so we keep it in this spreadsheet. And then the last thing is we keep yes. So that's our collaborative ready to edit folder. And that's where our freelancers can kind of work on their stories and put their stories when they're ready to edit, but it keeps it separated from the main folder so that we're not accidentally putting unedited content into there. And yeah, so we just kind of, that's how we operate. One last thing is that in our main folder, we have like a little, we have a projects folder, and inside there is where each of the individually co-produced projects. So when partners are working together on something, they have sort of a little workspace within the folders that they're able to use. And that's a good way that we've been able to kind of work with each other on those projects.
Thank you. Thank you. Simplicity is a beautiful
It
thing.
is very simple. I'm actually interested to hear the other folks in case other things are less clunky and better,
Right.
but I like.
Well, next I want to bring up Tegan. So since you wrote this masterful piece of artwork in March, I want to know, you spoke about how one of the challenges is that the different media groups use different platforms to share. So what has been the approach since you've written that article? What has been your approach, and how have things changed in the way you approach this situation?
Mm-hmm. Well, we've had the privilege of a lot of lead time on this project. Our reporters start on June 1st, so we haven't actually produced any content yet. And I was hired in October, so I've had a great, opportunity to speak with some of our colleagues at Wisconsin Watch and Investigate Midwest and Resolve Philly and the Colorado News Collaborative and Local Media Association, a lot of other collaborative journalism outlets, and kind of heard the same thing from a lot of them, is that we're writing this really great stuff and we want to share it widely, but it's not that easy to do. So I'd love to hear more from Melanie on what your pickup rates are. But I come from public radio, where I've worked for the past 14 years at radio stations up and down the river, and I've done a lot of collaborations as a reporter and as an editor with Reveal and NPR and ProPublica. So I kind of come into this with some experience of what it's like to do the work too. And a lot of the work in those cases was just transferring files around and getting things in the right format, and building stories out on various content management systems. And it really took a lot of hours of our time. So what we're trying to do with this project is avoid some of those problems and make it really easy for the subscribers. They're not technically subscribers, but just whomever signs up for our distribution network to download and then put the stories on their website. So we're going to use 3 tools. You may have heard of some of these. One is the AP's story share tool, and that is like a website that gives logins to users and easy to use interface that hosts all of the elements, the photos and video potentially, and print in one place. So all of our subscribers will get logins, they'll log in and they can grab all the elements from there. And it's very intuitively organized, and it looks a lot like the password protected AP member site. And then we're going to send out an email blast, which seems to be something that everybody does, and let people know that those stories are ready for download. And then we're also going to use an embed tool that Michael mentioned, made by Distributed Media Labs. So websites that are amped, it's a certain format that he can talk more about, but they can embed this banner on their website that basically auto-populates with Ag and Water Desk content. And on our end, we're going to be organizing a story collection that drives traffic back to the originating news sites. Cal Matters and a few other outlets have used this. And it remains to be seen exactly how well this is going to work. I'd like to hear your perspective as well, Michael, on it. But I think that it could work really well, especially for our 10 core newsroom partners. Most of them are amped already, and they're very engaged newsroom partners, and there's no cost to us. So it's kind of an imperfect system, and it's going to still take a lot of our time and labor to use this three-pronged approach. And I also worry about, especially with smaller outlets, not having the time or capacity to log into StoryShare, maybe not having an amped website, how they're going to download our materials. So I'm interested in ideas. I'm thinking maybe we're just going to attach a Word doc to the email blast, so that if you're a small town newspaper and you're not even digital, you're not digital first, you're print first, you can at least just grab that Word doc without having to log into StoryShare and navigate that system. But that's our plan.
Understood. It's elaborative, but it's efficient. It sounds. It's getting it done.
I hope so. We'll find out when we write our first story, I guess.
Indeed. So, Ms. Coburn, I want to ask you, because you are the multimedia director, so you are creating content, and I can imagine if anybody wants people to get this content, it's definitely you. So tell me more about your process. I know you have some slides as well.
Sure, I have some slides, and I hope they're not too repetitive. There's with what other people have said, because there's some overlap with our system. So let me see if I can find my slides. Okay, can you all see the first slide? Can I get a yes or a
Yeah,
no?
you're good. You're going.
Okay, great. Thanks. Okay, so this is just our logo slide, just to say who we are, nonprofit news organization. And we distribute our stories through sort of a homegrown distribution system, and also through a variety of partnerships. Okay, so this is just sort of a quick look at where our stories have appeared over the past 10 years, mostly in Wisconsin, but all over the country. So we do get national pickup, which is pretty exciting. And then one of the things that we have implemented is a WordPress plugin called the Republication Tracker tool. So some of you may be familiar with this. It's available to anybody that has a WordPress site. It was developed by INN Labs. I'm not sure that it's still being supported, so that would be one caveat, but it's just a button that goes on your web stories, says republish this story. You click on it and it just serves up the whole HTML code, including the text and the photos that somebody can just cut and paste and throw the story directly onto their site. So this is something that we make available on all of our stories. And we just encourage anybody to take our stories as long as they follow a certain set of rules that we also link off the site in terms of not changing the content, not separating the photos and videos and multimedia elements from the story. So that's one thing that we do on all our stories. We do a ton of partnerships and collaborations. This is just a quick slide showing like many of the collaborations we do. And then we obviously hope that the partner that we work with distributes the story, as well as distributing through our own system. We just started working with Wisconsin Public Radio, as I mentioned, on a podcast. So that's a new distribution for us, that they're sending out audio. We decided to work with them so that they already have an established podcast feed with Apple News and Spotify and all the audio distribution networks. So we elected to have them, we produced the content and then WPR distributed it. So that this was a rare partnership where we actually didn't distribute the majority of our own content, but we realized that it would have a broader reach if we let someone else distribute it. So that was the tactic we took on this project. We also recently just signed up with Apple News and Microsoft Start, and through INN have a relationship with Newsbreak and Flipboard, who automatically pick up our stories. So that's another way that we're just like pushing our content out onto the web, hoping to get it in front of as many different people as possible, wherever they get their news, so that they wouldn't necessarily be relying on a traditional media, newspaper or website to see our stories. And then those stories will link back. You can read them in that native platform or link back to our website. Okay, but the main like historical distribution method that I inherited when I started here, and honestly before this conference started, I didn't even know how it worked. So I needed to look into it so I could tell you all how it worked. And actually, I was surprised by what I found, but we also have we have two websites. So we have our public facing website and we have a separate partners website that is password protected. You need a login. It sounds similar to the story share. We upload Word document versions of our stories, as well as high resolution photos and videos and graphics as high resolution as the website will support, because when Wisconsin Watch started, our main method of distribution was through print newspapers. And so we wanted to be able to provide as high res as possible for them, which is a different file than we're serving up on our own website, which would be a smaller web file. So I actually have, when I'm preparing a story for production, I have multiple folders, like one which is the high res version, one which is a lower res version, one which is like a web only version. So I have a lot of different folders. We also send, so when somebody comes to our, what we call our downloads page, they'll just see literally a link to the story, a cut line document, and then a list of photos. We also embed the caption directly into the photo, so people who are used to getting it that way can get it through the metadata. And then we also send out an email blast. We have over 300 editors on our list. We need to update this list. This is sort of a ongoing project where we're sort of still have this like legacy list of Wisconsin newspaper editors, but we know that there's so many new publications that we're not reaching right now. And then the big sort of so then the one thing that we do is, this happens through WordPress. We use a WordPress plugin called PawPress to do this. And the one thing that this enables us to do is that for every photo and every Word doc and every element that we put, we can see who downloads it. So the edit, we can see the name of the person that downloads every single file. And we put this in place even before I started here, because if we had to make a correction or an update, we didn't want to just provide the file to everybody. And then if we found that we had a typo or a factual error before publication, we didn't want to have to contact like 300 different people and say we made a mistake. So this allows us to only contact the people that we know downloaded the content. And the other thing that we're doing is we often send out our stories under embargo. So we'll usually put it out about 3 days before we publish, giving editors, again, a chance to do their layout, plan their print publication, plan their online version. And so often if we find an error or a typo before we publish, we can email that person before it ever goes out to the public. So this has been really invaluable. We don't often have corrections, but when we do, it's really great to only have to be able to email like 2 people or 3 people or 5 people instead of 300 people and say we had an error. And then our stories appear, all over the internet. Different publications will publish them in their own CMS. So like I said, we use this plugin called PawPress Tracker, which was developed by a company called PressPoint. We pay $100 a year for it. And the main thing I found out right before this conference is that the developer is not supporting this plugin anymore, and it is no longer available for purchase or use by other media organizations. So that is a really big bummer, because I was hoping to be able to come to this conference and like sell it and say it's such a great system, but it's no longer available. But it also means that we are relying on a system that's no longer supported. And, if the developer decides he's not going to support it anymore, then we don't have that system anymore. So I'm really interested in the systems you all are using. And we're still looking for a system that, allows us to serve up high res files, is password protected, and that we can track who downloads each element. So that's where we are. And I'll stop sharing my screen now.
Right, that's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lastly, we have Michael, and the thing that I wanted to ask you, I want to know about your process, but the idea of such an important conversation, in New Jersey, we only have 3 seasons now, so something's happening. Tell us about your process to get this information out.
Right. Well, you're exactly right. I mean, climate change is the issue of our time, right? And if you're not covering climate change, you're not covering the biggest story in the world. And that's why our partners have signed on to this. And we want to make sure that we remove as many barriers as possible to making sure that we can focus on the complicated nature of the story, not the sharing of it, right? So we can pull up those slides that I've sent in. You can just skip right to the second slide too here, Joe. So this is the tool that we have built for story sharing, and I'll have some screen caps to show you in a minute here. But basically, all of our partners' content is organized in 5 regional collections. They are put together in a what I would call semi-automated way. They come off RSS feeds that are tied already to topic-specific verticals on a website like climate or environment or something like that. And it was built for accelerated mobile pages. So any site that is amped, as they say, can go into this tool. It was built by Distributed Media Lab for us with a Google News Initiatives grant. We can go to the next slide and I'll give you a look here. So these are a couple of the regional collections that we have put together. We've got the Gulf, the West, the Great Lakes. There's also Southwest. We've got some in the Southeast as well. But this is what it looks like embedded on a website. It is only 2 lines of HTML code that's injected into the website and allows this to display. The beauty of it is a website needs to be amped to put into this, but it does not need to be amped to host this. So any website can put this in, and I'm told it has virtually no impact on load times or anything like that because the code is a pretty light lift. But what's exciting is you've seen this before, right? It looks like sponsored content. It looks like a related content thing at the bottom of any news story you've seen for years. What makes this special is it keeps you with our partner organization viewing trusted content. So we can go to the next slide. Say you click on one of these in the Great Lakes region. If I was on Planet Detroit's website, which is a great place to see this, they have it posted right at the bottom of their homepage, the view. If I'm on that website and I click on Detroit story, this loads as a lightbox. I have not left Planet Detroit's website and I'm viewing partner content from another partner in the collab and they're getting credit for it. And it's loading as it would load on Click on Detroit's website. So when you're scrolling through this, you're seeing all the images have come through, all of the videos, the text is formatted as it was, and everything's cleared. It takes away those problems of, are the photos cleared for my use? Did we introduce an error in the copy paste? And it just basically automates or centralizes, because I'm still touching it a little bit to make sure that the right stories are at the top, that kind of thing. But it helps take out that heavy lift of like manual copy pasting, rights, all that stuff that's really tough, especially on small newsrooms with limited staff, right? So that's what we're really excited about, is it lets the content just be shared with anyone that wants to share it. And the also beauty of it is you don't have to be a partner with the Climate Collaborative to host this. If you want to have those little strips of stories on your website, you can go to Distributed Media Labs right now and embed one of those for your region, and you're getting content. We could talk more about this too, but the next thing that we're talking about for this, if you want to advance the slide, is a way to monetize it too. We're going to have a couple tiers. We're still rolling that out right now and kind of figuring out the details, but the big picture is there's like a low tier where partners that embed this are basically doing no work on their end and getting a little bit of money from traffic, right? There's going to be a mid tier where you can see it's that bottom one, like a Go Green vertical that's kind of evergreen sponsored, or like evergreen sustainability content, that kind of thing that would be relevant to people that are already engaging with climate content. And then an opportunity to basically directly sponsor it for your news organization. And that's pretty exciting. So that would include obviously more work from an individual organization's sales team, but it's a higher return. So we're kind of offering those up right now and seeing where the interest is. But yeah, to Joe's point in the chat, it is a potential thing. We don't pretend to have it all figured out. This is a pilot. It's a new tool. It's been up and running on people's sites for a while now, but the monetization thing is a new tool for us, and we're just kind of figuring it out and seeing where it goes. You can advance to the next slide, which is just a repeat, so you can see these again. But these have a couple different ways they can display, either horizontally like this, or they have the opportunity to go in a vertical display, and they can go anywhere on a site. Some people have them on their home pages. I have a link that I will drop in the chat to KSAT in San Antonio if you'd like to see it in the wild. They link the this on their like climate landing page, so you can interact with it. Same thing with Planet Detroit, but yeah, it can be at the bottom of a specific article. It can be on a homepage. It can be on a topic page, and it just gives people an opportunity to interact with our content that requires no editorial input. It's just one person semi-automating this so that it goes out to anyone that's embedded these. So we're really excited about it.
Well, thank you. Thank you. We're actually going to jump into the questions portion of this, and I'll let Melanie.
I had a question for all of you guys. So how a lot of these sound, it's a way for like a more streamlined way to share content digitally. But what about the folks what about your print partners or even like, I know for our partners, they use our content in their newsletters, or they, you know what I mean? So is there an additional way that they can share that content other than these methods?
Well,
Coburn and I both, sorry, I think Coburn and I both kind of detailed that. She showed the back end download on her website, and then I didn't have a slideshow, but we're using the AP Story Share product, which is a paid like we have to pay for that product. So we did some additional fundraising in order to do that. And we're going to buy like a bulk membership essentially, and then give out free logins to all of our subscribers. So they'll log in and be able to get high res elements there as well as the copy. And then, like I mentioned, we might attach a Word doc to keep it simple for those folks like the small town newspaper in rural Wisconsin, where I'm from. They don't even really have a website. He only publishes print with his 2 employees. So that's kind of how we're thinking about it.
I'll say in terms of sharing other content, we're more manual in that way. If folks want to collaborate in the process of reporting a story, that's one of the reasons we're organized by region. And I do see Eric's question in the chat. I'll give you a link in a second here, but that's hands-on, right? When we're doing hands-on reporting and sharing resources between partner newsrooms, we're connecting them directly. I'm kind of the go-between of like, who's giving what, where is this going to live? And that's why we're organized by region, is because climate is such like a universal story, but also a hyper-local story, right? Like we experience climate change in the Southwest much differently than in the Northeast or something. And it's different stories and different topics. And so that's why we have regional calls once a month where we get our partners from one region on together to talk about what are we working on? How can this story, be improved from input? But that is admittedly a more manual process. But it's kind of a, both sides of the coin.
I deal with one of the underlying questions that's been frequent throughout the summit is about funding. So how do we fund these efforts, especially the more elaborative ones that have so many moving parts? How do we fund the distribution efforts? Anyone?
Well,
go ahead, please. I'm sorry.
I mean, for us, it's having a person. I mean, it's having the actual collaborative exist, but also, having a person to put the stuff in the folder, to make sure that we're communicating, and when there are, so that's where our funding need always comes from, is that sort of operational part. And for right now, we use the Google folder, and that works for us right now, and it's free. But down the road, that is a key part of getting our work out, and so to each other. So at some point we may need to revisit.
Yeah, I imagine, because once you get to enough space, you need to purchase more space.
Yeah, it's surprisingly not that expensive, but we archive our stories and things like that. But there are downsides for sure, and like making sure the folder doesn't get too cluttered, and making sure that we have it, like all our stories archived so people can still find them, but they're not right there. And Michael.
Yeah, I was just going to say on the point of funding, like our tool came from a Google News Initiatives grant, right? There's interest in sharing something like this because we know it's a known problem that collaborating across various technical backgrounds and CMS and all this stuff, there's a lot of hiccups that get introduced just by folks working with different tech, and that's where AMP was kind of the magic thing that's so similar between almost any website that either is amped or can be amped. But that's why I think Google News Initiatives had interest in a project like this. So
Yeah. Another question that was proposed was, and I know Coburn, you touched on this, and maybe you all have at some point in your conversation, but about editing, whether it's editing the text or editing photographs or videos from your from the submissions. How do you go about editing, especially when there's an influx, when you have so many partners? How do you go about editing and getting it out?
Yeah, I'm
Like a
not
lot
sure
of-
if you're talking about editing the actual content.
The content,
or,
yes.
Yeah, okay. I mean, we do have, we have in-house editors and reporters that are working on our own story. If it's a partner collaboration, sometimes we will actually just get permission ahead of time to edit the story, like to make it more Wisconsin centric or add a local Wisconsin source, something like that. Sometimes we will add our own reporting to make it more Wisconsin focused. And so and then just in terms of like when I'm planning the photos, I just try to make a selection ahead of time. So I'm only distributing like, the best photos or 5 photos or something along with the story. So we're not just like dumping a ton of content on people. So each of our stories are very carefully edited and fact checked actually before we get them out the door, again, to try to minimize any sort of typos or factual errors that we might have. So we do have every story we put out. I mean, at least 3 or 4 people are looking at the story, the photos, the cut lines before anything goes out the door, because again, like our name's on it, and because it can get distributed anywhere and show up in any newspaper like across the country, we just want to make sure we're just as factually accurate as we can. Also, I saw somebody put a question in about possible early release and why we're doing that for some partners. I want to make sure, I'm not sure if I totally get the question, but like, again, like our system was sort of set up when Wisconsin Watch was mostly serving print partners. And so it's, again, a little bit of a legacy system where, we were giving print partners a couple of days to just lay out their paper and plan, what their coverage was going to be. And so we would all publish at the same time. It was early access just in a sense of like, just for layout purposes, but we'd set an embargo date and time, and we wouldn't publish until that same day. So that's sort of the history of why it was that way. And anybody can become a media partner for us. It's not a terribly exclusive list. You just have to request it and we'll put you on the list. And then, we publish at the same time. Any newspaper is free to publish, or any website. And then after it's live on our site, anybody can republish it. So it's a little bit early access, but just for the sake of planning, if that helps answer that question. It's not like they can publish sooner.
Tegan, Michael,
On editing
on the idea of editing or specifically corrections.
corrections. For us, I heard one of the panelists mentioning not wanting to like let everyone necessarily know when you've messed up. And I just sort of leaned into it from the jump, and like, we were just like, you know what, everyone's gonna make mistakes. So we just, we use our email updates, and if there's a correction, they know to tell me or to tell Rachel. We'll get that out as quickly as possible, whether it's us or our partners. And we do try to tell them, what was the error? Are you going to get sued? That kind of thing. So
for our purposes on corrections, the beauty of AMP is that it's loading it fresh every time, right? So I'm not editing the content because I don't have oversight over these partner organizations, other than that they join our collaborative, right? They are creating it with their own editorial process that they have to stand behind the content, right? We are partnered together because we trust their editorial processes, obviously. But if they're issuing a correction in that tool, it'll update, right? So it'll be there. Everything has gone through, and it'll refresh as soon as they refresh. So I'm sure there's a little technical delay there that is kind of behind the scenes, but it's loading live every time, so we don't have to worry about pushing something out. It's living in the format that it lives in. So
We're going to use Google Drive for editing purposes, and I'll be the primary editor for regional content on our desk, but I'll be working closely with the 10 editors at our partner newsrooms, and then my boss, Sarah Shipley-High, will also be a sort of backstop editor as well. So lots of editors involved. In terms of corrections, I was trained at Wisconsin Watch as an intern there for a couple of years, and they have an extremely fastidious fact-checking process that takes hours and hours and hours. So hopefully we won't have a lot of corrections, because I'm going to be applying a similar method. But that's part of the reason that we chose AP Story Share, because there are some basic legal protections built into the agreement that our subscribers will sign, like copyright protection. So we're hoping that that will protect us a little bit in the case, say, where we publish a freelance contributor's photo and maybe the originating outlet didn't have full rights to use that. So hopefully that doesn't happen, but some of that's written into those agreements, which was kind of partly why it was worth paying for.
Absolutely. I do have a question from Richard to Coburn. How does Wisconsin Watch collaborate with Milwaukee Neighborhood News Service, ideally? This is a series of questions, so I'll let you answer the first question.
Yeah, it's a series. Okay, so the first question is, we are partners. We're also financial partners. We just got a joint American Journalism Project grant together. So we share content. We publish their stories. They publish, I mean, they publish ours, but anybody can publish ours. But we also, will republish their stories. And we also have a joint texting project called News 414, where we're distributing news you can use to specific neighborhoods in Milwaukee through a text-based service. And so people that are subscribed to that service can contact a reporter just on their phone if they need specific information. Especially we're focusing on issues of housing and food insecurity. And so then we're also sort of like using that information to inform reporting that then shows up on both the NNS site and on our site, and our reporters are working back and forth together, collaborating. So it's a partnership that just sort of crosses a lot of different lines.
I like that you mentioned the text service, because text message marketing and ways of communicating has such a high, the messages have such a high opening rate. So that's actually great. The next part of the question was, is there an example of a favorite collaboration?
Oh gosh. I mean, my favorite one, I think, is just our most recent one with Wisconsin Public Radio, and also the new News Lab in Northeast Wisconsin, where we got funding from the Green Bay Community Foundation and also Microsoft to do reporting and to put out this investigative podcast we've been working on for 3 years. So we've had a reporter, producer, editor, fact checking, and legal. All was funded by Wisconsin Watch, or provided by Wisconsin Watch, and then WPR provided the music, the engineering, the mixing, and the distribution, and the marketing. So that was a huge lift that like neither of our organizations could have produced that content on our own, but by working together, we were able to put out this great podcast. It's called Open and Shut. Please subscribe. It's really great.
It's good.
Nice. I do have a question, and it's really for everyone. We'll start with Michael about the click-through rate. So on the bottom, on the bar at the bottom of of the screen that you propose, what is the click-through rate? Have you studied that? Have you studied the metrics in that?
yeah, thanks for that question. I have heard, I don't have a number for you off the top of my head. I know it is growing because this is a new tool, and it kind of depends on the placement, right? I mean, some folks feature it very prominently on their sites and it's in multiple spots and it gets a lot of eyeballs. Some people have it just in one spot. I know it's growing. I don't have a metric for you. I think it kind of depends on the region and the content, and yeah, I guess the short answer is I don't have a number, but it's something that we're working to learn more about, especially as we launch and we look at this monetization process. And I mean, it also would depend right on the number of the traffic of your outlet. So yeah, that's kind of it's an iffy answer for you, but I don't have a number for you, but we're working on it.
Understood. And but that is a question. It's a valuable question, because no matter, even though we are attempting to get this content out. We're still want to study the metrics on it. And that really, that concludes our panel. I want to thank all of our panelists, Melanie, Tegan Dukehart, Coburn Dukehart, Michael Crowe. I want to thank you guys so much. And thank you to the summit. I'm happy to be here. My name is James Frazier. Peace.
James, you're amazing. Thank you. And yeah, that was such an interesting conversation because distribution is something that so many news organizations collaborative struggle with. And I'm glad there's tools being built. And if anyone wants to fund more tools being built, I think we've got some folks around the country who would love to be guinea pigs.